Hello. Welcome to SonarFeed, episode 274. You can't win them all, apparently.
Apparently.
In theory, we're streaming on the internet.
It's always
There may or may
dicey
not be
proposition.
sound. We think there's sound. Technology is telling us that there's sound. If there's not sound, please tell us, and our audio engineer will get right on that. So thanks to the illustrious Mickey Turner for replacing our soundboard with one that he had at home conveniently today, because our soundboard has decided either the power plug doesn't want to work or something else. So I will work on turning our sound up. For those of you telling us that we are not loud enough, I can handle that.
It involves turning the knob one direction. So
I'm turning all the audio up. So if we're really, really loud in like 2 minutes, you'll know why. So hopefully that's a little bit better. Are you playing that right here? No one would ever do that, right? Anyway, are you eating a sandwich? What kind of sandwich?
Schnitzel.
Oh, how's that working out for you? Schnitzel?
Got a lot of flat meat.
Sounds tasty.
I can't think of anything inappropriate to say.
All right, so what's up?
How's it going?
I mean, it's been better.
Yes, it has. That was unfortunate.
That was not my favorite game that I've watched of the Sounders.
Yeah.
It also... No, it's actually up there with one of my not favorites.
I would say that
games.
it's up there with some of the least favorite games you've ever watched.
Ever, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's one thing to suffer those games where you're depleted and just not up for it. And it's a different thing to suffer a loss when you're at home and maybe losing 4-0 and getting refunds.
And then you
from
get a
the front
refund?
office.
Weird.
Yeah. And it's another thing when you just give up a fluke goal or something like that, and it's just one of those days.
What about multiple non-fluke goals? How do you feel about that?
Well, that's an interesting thing because they were obviously not in the game basically after the 20th minute. And so it's a different feeling when you realize that, this just isn't going to be your day. And so you don't necessarily... You're not pissed, really. I mean, you're just annoyed. You're just kind of sitting there like, well, this sucks. But that's a different feeling than, like I said, getting gutted with a last-second goal or, like I said, a 4-0 loss. Although it was kind of similar to a 4-0 loss. But it was just one of those games where you just
that it was 4-1?
Yeah, yes. They did actually score, so that was good. But, it's just one of those games where you just realize that the other team is much better than you, at least based on the teams that were on the field. Obviously, there are some injury issues, and LAFC was at full strength, basically.
Right.
I think Lee Wen was their only real injury, and he came off the bench, so he's almost at full, back to full strength. And
Darn, you have to sub in Lee Win.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I wrote for Sound Art Heart was just, you could just tell the benches are different. And theirs is better at the moment.
But this was like, you're going to tell me the Sounders can't be down, call it 3 players, and not get trounced? Because if that's the case, now I know you're playing probably the best team in the league. They're the best. They are.
They are the best team in the league.
But aside from that, like, is it that fragile? I don't think it is. Because this also felt like it just kept going. It was like, oh, it's like this guy and this guy. Oh, and Chad Marshall. And then they were like, oh, we stacked the deck, bring it. But the thing that's kind of scary is the word I'll use with them is they played 9 games now. Mm-hmm. They're rolling over people.
I don't know how they lost to Vancouver over the midweek.
I flagged this to the folks here at Berliner before we started. They're plus 18.
Yeah.
What? The next 3 teams are at plus 18 total. Like, that's kind of nuts. So I don't want to turn this into the LAFC show at all, but like...
Well, the problem is there wasn't much for the Sounders
right, but this was
to
like,
talk about.
We knew this was a test.
Yeah.
And it went as many surmised it would, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think so. obviously during the week, we knew that Bruin was out. Schmetzer ruled him out,
Yep.
I think, on Tuesday. And Rui Diaz was out training a little bit. As it turns out, he didn't actually end up training for the rest of the week because of his heel contusion, which has turned out to be a bit more dicey than they thought. I don't think it's just one of those things that's not gone as well as they hoped it would have.
Things you find out looking at players' social media ephemera. Oh, interesting. And then they deleted it. Weird.
Yeah. Which is always too late. I don't know why. They might as well just leave it up because
At
it's
that
going to
point,
get
like,
screen capped.
Oh, that didn't happen?
Yeah.
Yes, it
Yeah.
did. Yeah.
It's a nice attempt at gaslighting. It was like, I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't see
Injury.
Didn't see anything there. So Rui Diaz didn't practice pretty much all week. And then Marshall also ended up having an issue. And it was just, you just realize at that point, it's like, okay, they're not going to be at full strength. And they're going to have to call on the depth who hadn't played really all year.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a double whammy. It'd be one thing if these guys were, getting time, but getting starts at the Defiance, while it's good for fitness and all that kind of stuff. It's just not the same level, and you just happen to lose your depth at center back, and they didn't have Campbell, who played with the Defiance I think the day before or something like that. Yeah, exactly. He doesn't look anywhere close to the first team at this point, unless they have, knock on wood, catastrophic injuries. And, we knew Broom was going to be out, and then it was pretty clear that Rui Diaz wasn't going to be there. And so that leaves you with Morris. Now, I know there's people complaining about, they maybe should bring in another player, but I don't know if you can really justify bringing in
Is it a
a
forward though,
third
that the
forward.
team you'd want any? That's not what this team has needed this year
No.
specifically.
Yeah. Their problems were really with the injuries, the back line, and the midfield was just, they weren't good on the day. And that basically eliminated Morris being able to do anything because he was having to track back to help on defense because LAFC's midfield was just running around doing whatever they wanted. And so there you go. So you combine injuries with a super talented opponent and you get what we got on Sunday. And, the good thing was they were able to come back at one point, at least make it interesting for about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And then that was over. And then Schmetzer did the smart thing and got a bunch of players out of the game because it was a lost cause at that point. And around the 65th minute, there was, it was 4-1, and it was just, it wasn't gonna happen. And you had Kim Kiki on a yellow card, so if he had gotten a second yellow, which could have easily happened, trying to chase down LAFC.
He has a number of cards, by the way.
This year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what his
last match as
accumulation.
well.
Yeah.
So I don't know where he is on that, but in my mind's eye, he has been served a number of yellows.
He might be close to the 5 card accumulation, but better not to get 2 in one game, obviously.
Let's not do that.
Yeah, because at that point, if Marshall's not there, then you are starting Campbell and Torres, even against a not very good San Jose team who apparently has figured out how to score now. That would have been about the worst thing to have happen, and then have to come in and face LAFC at home and try to stop them. They'll be on full rest while the Sounders have the midweek game. So it was a good decision by Schmetzer to get those guys out of there and save them for Wednesday, because it just wasn't going to happen. And hopefully Bruin or Rui Diaz, one of those two, is back for Wednesday. I'm still a little, I don't know anything about the status of their injuries per se, but I'd still be, Bruin still might be a little dicey for a midweek game, just because hamstring injuries are obviously really tough to deal with. And if you don't want a more situation in 2017 where he's trying to play through it,
right,
and then it's just completely ineffective for the rest of the year, especially if Rui Diaz is going to be dealing with his stuff still for another couple of games.
It's a tricky one, because on one hand, points are points, so you want to win both games upcoming this week. But you also, Schmetzer is smart enough to not just go, well, we've got to stack the deck against San Jose because you just had a tough loss, blah, 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 blah. Like, I went to peek back at some stuff from April 15th. Jeremiah Oshan had written something, Sounders are on a historic run. Like, think about where we went. This is the highs and lows, and we talked about this a lot in the offseason, but the subhead is they're now 22-3 since last July and have 71 points in their past 34 regular season matches. I'm like, wow, that's super impressive. And then they got killed by LAFC. And it's like, that's where I think we just need to step back and go, okay, well, now they lost one more game in that run and still have, so now it's 71 points in 35 matches. Still super really good.
Still 2 points per game.
Yeah, so like at that point, that's when you go, okay, step back for a second. You want to put on a good show because, frankly, there's tiebreakers and other things that potentially come into play.
Yeah.
So you don't want to like stomp on San Jose and then get wasted at home versus LAFC. Like you do want to have some face, and frankly, they probably need to know how to beat LAFC.
Yes.
So
at some point that'll be beneficial.
It's gonna be a thing. So I am curious to see what they do, from a lineup standpoint and just approach in general between Wednesday and Sunday. Sunday, right? It is
Sunday. Midday.
It's nice that there's some time between those matches, but at the same time, we still have some nebulous injury stuff hanging over, and I think it's like, how do you balance that, 3 games in a week and I think that's where maybe tomorrow we have a little bit better of a sense of what we're going to get.
Yeah, I would say for Wednesday, since we might as well move into San Jose unless anybody wants to really talk about that game anymore.
Just keep recapping and Hunch Bunch pointed out Kihi has 2 yellows, so
he's
2
fine.
in 2 weeks.
Yeah,
so he's fine.
Yeah.
We probably just saw him get warned like 562 times prior to that moment.
Yeah.
But so that's good news.
Yeah, for Wednesday, what I would think is that they will still have some rotation, because they probably think that they can get a result against San Jose with a rotated lineup, and they should be able to get a result against San Jose with a rotated lineup. And I'm guessing that they, while they'll say, you focus on one game at a time and avoid trap games like LAFC did in Vancouver.
Yep.
At least LAFC was on the road, so you still figure that the Sounders should be able to get a result. So I think that they will rotate a little bit. So Morris will still be in, but I could see like maybe Buana getting a start, and Chip getting another start after playing, scoring a good goal. Nico will play because he's an Iron Man and can play 3 games in a week, and then maybe you give Svensson a rest and put Dellum back there, or maybe put Nico in the back with Roldan, because he's played that before. So, and then at this point you got to wait and see if Marshall's close to being back. I don't think his injury is awful. He was out training last week, but he just they have to manage him. He's 34, 35. I can't remember. I think he might be 35. So they may rest him again and roll with Kim Ki-hee and Torres again, because they don't have any other options.
That was super fun.
Yeah, they don't have any other options except for Campbell, who they obviously aren't highly unlikely to use at this point.
And again, I got in like 92 internet arguments about this last night. It was really just one, and then I moved on. But it felt like 92 ish. That may have just been the wine and the jet lag. But Torres was not the problem in all of those situations that I've seen that been said. There was some not great midfield action last night. And there was definitely one specific play with Ladero where he gave up the ball, which led to a goal.
Yeah.
Could somebody else have stopped it? Absolutely. But it just felt like they got broken down
constantly.
everywhere. And I don't think it's as simple. And I think JJ points out he doesn't look he's match fit. I would agree. But that's where, unfortunately, like that's the call that got made. And beyond that, Torres was not the crux of the loss. Like, they got stomped on at multiple levels.
Yeah.
I mean, frankly, that first goal, that's like video game stuff where you're
Yeah,
like,
just-
oh, yeah, I'm going to save that and like post that on the internet. It just felt like they, and again, this is a great comment from John. They're trying too hard all night. Not a lot of simple. I would agree. Totally. Like, we got to do something, and that's my fear is you got beaten up. You come up against an opponent who has been getting beaten up on Wednesday. This is not classic trap game by any means, but it is a game where you could potentially overlook it.
Yeah.
And San Jose comes in going, sure, we'll take you on.
They've done it before.
Yeah.
In Seattle, many a time. It's only recently that the Sounders have kind of gotten that bugaboo off their.
I mean, they
off their
want the
back.
Heritage Cup, and
Yes.
Does
Does anybody know where that is
no,
currently?
literally no one knows.
These-
We should have an episode about the Heritage Cup.
Where is the Heritage
Where
Cup?
is the Heritage Cup? We could have people call in. JJ says it's on eBay. So anyway, we'll talk predictions a little bit later, but I don't disagree with you need 4 points from the next two matches. I think that's
Well, I think you need that if you think you have any chance of winning the Supporters Shield.
even just for like your short-term confidence.
Well, that
I think
too.
you need that. And then you have you've got two homes this week, and then you have a week, and then it's away at Minnesota.
Minnesota, I think.
So there's some emotional baggage that's going to come with that particular match.
Yeah.
Attention's going to be on some different things, but you have a midweek match versus a well below the line team in San Jose, and then back to the top, and then Minnesota the week following, and are they killing anybody? No, they're not world beaters by
Their
any means.
defense is shockingly bad.
But they're in the playoff spot.
that is also true.
They're in
They've
six
got their
right
offense is fairly potent. So.
now, and they're playing at a new home, and there's energy that comes with that. So the next 10 days, 12 days, whatever. There's potentially some interesting storylines, to come out of it.
Yeah, it'll be if over the next 4 games, if they only win one of them, say, then
Let's not do that.
Yeah, that's going to be the pressure will start to come back, and the happy start will kind of go away. And you can tell things have been going along smoothly over the last month and a half with all the wins, and everyone's been kind of just enjoying life. But MLS has a way of bringing you back down to earth
sure.
at some point. No one goes undefeated, obviously, and so we'll see how they respond. I mean, I think they'll respond well. They're going to have a point to prove against San Jose, so it's not like that's. I'd say the only benefit of that loss is that it should focus their minds on the next game, and I doubt they'll be overlooking San Jose.
I don't think they will.
Yeah, they're not going to want to go into that that LAFC game on a 2-game losing streak,
Right.
And facing a team that probably will be at full strength unless they have some injuries in practice, while the Sounders will still be dealing with whatever's going on with their roster, and so they going into and if you lose that game, then you've got. And you lose San Jose, that's 3 in a row, and then you really start to wonder what's going on.
I vote no.
Yeah,
Let's go back because we weren't here to talk about the Toronto game. In the section in GA, someone had said to me like 10 minutes in, they were like, "This feels like an away game," and it wasn't necessarily the crowd; it was just something about the vibe on the field, like the way the game was being approached, and maybe it's just the stature at which the last few Toronto Seattle matches have been, or of the last few, but something just felt a little bit different, and it was like for a home match that was a pretty tough time.
Oof, yeah.
Aside from the the call it barn burner for what it is, like for a Sounders match, like that's a lot of goals.
Yeah.
Back and forth wise, and like you knew Altidore was going to come in to play. Pozuelo is really
absolute
good.
stud. Yeah.
But like that was a pretty serious match, and the Bruin, like there's the Bruin highlights and then there's the Bruin lowlight, all in one match. And like I guess a question is like, is that really a precursor to what you saw against LAFC? Like different type of club, different level of play.
Yeah.
Was it that they're like, oh, okay, this is a different test, and then you saw it, away from home in LA yesterday, and like maybe did we learn something from the Toronto match that was indicative of where things might go?
Yeah, I think that there's some questions to be asked of the defense, given the step up in opponent and how they've performed, because their previous five games, they hadn't played any world beaters really at all, and so they had a few shutouts, a couple of 1-goal games. Any of the Cincinnati one was a golazo, so that wasn't necessarily a bad defense. It was just a guy who just rocketed one from 25 yards. And so I think there is something to the fact that as the talent has increased or the opponent has stepped up in quality, it's interesting that the goals have Colts conceded have as well. So I still have some concerns about the midfield pairing, defensive midfield pairing with Svensson and Roldan. I'm not sure if they're quite mobile enough. I mean, positioning and experience can make up for that. But there is something to be said for being able to get where you need to go in a timely fashion. And that was, remember, Spencer talked about that of the first couple of games. He was concerned about Roldan and Svensson's pairing. So that kind of leads into maybe what they need to do in the summer, although that's obviously down the line as far as reinforcements are concerned. But I'll be interested to see how they respond over like the next 4 games. If they are giving up a bunch of goals but scoring a bunch, then you kind of know where they need to go in the summertime.
Right.
But I think there are some questions to ask of the defense at this point.
Yeah, I have the Shield standings up, and it is nice to see that the first 4 teams
are
in the West are the first 4 teams in the Shield, and then DCU and TFC, and then the Dynamo after that. I don't know why there's a line at 7.
Yeah, that's
super
weird.
dumb.
That's weird.
It's like they use the formatting from the conferences. But on one hand, you look at that and you're like, okay, you beat one of the teams below you. Okay, or 2. Am I counting?
Toronto.
So you beat Toronto, right? Mm-hmm. You got beat by one of the teams 2 ahead of you.
Yeah.
The LA Galaxy thing is really is perplexing to me this season.
How they're good
I'm
again?
just interested to see, like, can they really hold that up? And on one hand, like, fun for LA media scene because that's just crazy.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, like, if that's what we're chasing down for the rest of the year, like, what a pain in the ass.
Yeah, that's going to be tough. I mean, my thought is they probably can't keep it up unless they don't have any injuries. Yeah, the Galaxy. Unless they don't have any injuries, because Latan will score 28 goals.
Yeah.
So it's entirely, if he's healthy for the entire year, it's entirely possible that
he could. Like, I am the MLS.
He is the MLS.
The MLS.
The MLS. So if he stays healthy for the entire year, I don't see any reason why they wouldn't be able to just outgun teams. Although they haven't actually scored a ton of goals so far this year.
They've only scored 13.
Yeah, so we'll see. It's just a matter of whether they can stay healthy or not, because I don't think they really have room to bring in anybody new. They're maxed out of DPs.
Yeah,
and they can't buy anybody down to bring in another one, and so they have to be maxed out on their budget. So their team is probably going to be their team going forward, unless they move somebody else out.
And this is where I think it's really important. Like, if you look at the top 4, so frankly, really with the top 7, with the exception of DCU, home matters for these teams.
Yeah.
So the first 3 teams are undefeated at home. 4 teams, right? So
Yeah.
Dallas is drawn.
Actually, 6 of the 7 are undefeated.
Yeah,
at home.
undefeated except for DCU.
Yeah.
And that's really interesting to be, again, not surprising. Home
Yeah.
cooking matters. But that's where, like, these next 2 games, to your point earlier, like, not make a break, but affect dramatically this Supporter Shield standings. Because it changes the recipe in order to get there.
Yeah, and the Sounders, they'll be fine at home this year. That's not really an issue, but they'll need to go on the road and get some results, and they've historically been pretty good on the road as well. So I'm not overly worried. It's just what I'm more concerned about the defense than I probably initially was, just based on what Smetzer had to say at the beginning of the year and how they've performed versus the more high quality opponents.
But that's where,
And
like,
the
at center back,
injuries.
depth is 0.
It is at the moment.
And that's kind of scary
I mean,
when they're not kids.
yeah,
Not that a lot of teams have center backs that are
yeah, and that's what
kids.
I was about
but
to
at
say.
the same time, like, you don't have one backup like player. That's a challenge.
Again, part of me agrees to that. The other part of me wonders how many teams in MLS have a quality third and fourth center backs.
Totally.
And I can't think of many or any
But I think
off the
there's-
top of my head.
There's a difference between, like, quality and, like,
Serviceable.
it's a problem.
Yeah.
And that's where, like, it's not to slight Torres, but not looking match fit or not, frankly, fitting this team right now, and
That may be the bigger
center
problem.
back is being called on to do.
That might be the bigger problem.
Because, again, like, that's a defensive unit. The rest of them have been the same for the bulk of the minutes this season. You saw pretty consistent players on the outside backs, and Marshall and Kim were doing their thing. So there's just something to the string that they are on as, a unit, and you break that or you break it twice, and it makes dramatic differences. I didn't say break. I did say break. But just peeking at this piece on Center at Heart from, I guess, yesterday, Mark Kastner had written one lesson the Sounders need to learn: what to do when Chad Marshall can't play. And, like, that might be the question, because your Ford's gonna get injured at some point during this. Like, it's gonna happen. Let's hope 2 of them don't get injured at any given time. But, like, defensive stalwarts are a thing. Look at teams that win, and sometimes they're not superstar league, noticeable players. But, like, look at even that Toronto match, Laurent Simon, like, I don't know, dude holds it up back there. So
Sort of.
no, but, like, you have consistent players week over week. Like, there's just something to that. So whether he's lets up a goal or makes a bad play here and there is one thing. There truly is, I think, something to that chemistry that just affects everything kind of in front of it. And when the mids don't have the confidence at some level in your defenders, they do different things when they're out there on the field. And I think we probably saw a little bit of that yesterday.
Yeah, I'm not sure what they can do about it, except for going out and spending big money on a.
They're going to make
center
like
back.
a $5 million center back signing.
No, that just goes against their philosophy, and teams in MLS have not done that. Even though, not 5 million, but they should be upping their spend on defensive players.
Yeah.
That's been a problem for years. I mean, MLS made like 4-3 score lines, but it doesn't make for the prettiest soccer on
Happy
a game.
keepers.
Yes, and that too, and then it just kills you in international competitions as well. So
This is not a rebuilding year.
this is the opposite of that.
Let's bridge on to something super positive. So, baby Sounders.
Yeah, how about that?
They seem to be decent. Like, nice to take out Valencia. So, first MLS team to win the
this version
new
of
and
the
improved,
GA.
or this version of Generation Adidas Cup. Took out Valencia. Was it 1-0?
Last 77th minute goal, give or take, by Serrano, I believe it was.
So, pretty amazing.
Yeah,
and I think
awesome.
this is the continuation of a trend that you've seen at kind of the academy or youth level for years now. Whether it's the Udan or this, just like it looks and feels and smells different, which is great.
Yeah, it's definitely another step in the progression that Garth put into place in 2015. They spent a ton of money, invested a ton of money in, just upping what the academy was, training, facilities a little bit, just scouting, recruiting, and it has culminated. This is probably, Garth says this is they're on a 5-year plan. And I tend to think of it right now as year 3 of that plan, which is, their results are
It's going
highly,
okay.
Yeah, it's going fantastically. But, obviously he said the next step is to get these guys at USL playing well, and then finally make the transition to the first team. And they're still not at the USL playing well level. But now that they are dominating the academy ranks and the competitions, you can see that's where they've completed phase 3 of what they're trying to do, and so the next step is to get them into the Defiance and playing consistently, because Alfonso Ocampo Chavez, who's the stud forward and has been just a revelation, near revelation at the youth levels, has played some Defiance games, but he hasn't really made a mark there yet. So that's his next step, is to get there and start scoring goals and making an impact. And I expect he will, but again, he's only 17 years old, and only the true, prodigies like Alphonso Davies are, typically getting in there any younger and really just, tearing stuff up. So that's his kind of next step. And then obviously Danny Leva's already, I'm curious if he would have made the bench in Colorado if that game had played. Although since he was at the GA Cup, I tend to think not. I know they were kind of ruminating about maybe doing that, but didn't end up happening. So, and he's going to be gone now because he made the U17 World Cup roster. So, anybody looking for him to make an appearance with the first team probably is not going to see that until June or so. Maybe he starts getting some starts at in the Open Cup. But just a fantastic performance. Yeah, I'm good. Just a fantastic performance by the kids. They were, especially the West Ham game was just incredible. Scored 4 goals in the first 35 minutes, and we're just all over them. And then the game was pretty much over at that point, and they were able to kind of cruise. And then against Valencia, both times, they held their own in both games. They lost the first one, but they were certainly in the game the entire way. And they made it through the group fairly easily. And then as the knockout games started, they really just turn up their performance and beat Flamengo, or Flamengo may have been in their group, I can't remember. They beat Flamengo, and then West Ham, and then Valencia.
Some decent teams.
Oh, River Plate was the other one that they that was, and they're recognized as the best
also
youth academy in the world.
Decent world team.
Yes. So it was fantastic. The kids looked great. There's really not enough good things you can say about their performance, and Garth should rightly be proud of what they did and what they accomplished, and now try to get them on the Defiance playing well, because the Defiance could certainly use the reinforcements right now, given how they've looked on the road, which is bad.
Do you want to comment on this subject any further than you just did?
So, I know Garth, he had some comments for an interview where basically he said that he's not happy with how the Defiance are performing, which is an understatement. But
weird.
Yeah. And it's just one thing to, be a bad quote-unquote team and you're losing 2-1, 3-2, 3-1, 0-2. But when you're going out there and getting blitzed 3-0, 4-0, 5-0, that's an entirely different thing. And that goes to a just general lack of competitiveness with the team. And that is not something you can expect people to pay show up for and pay for to see. You know, again, even bad teams, people will come out to support. But if you're getting blitzed, they're just not going to be bothered to show up for that, especially when you're already talking about a minor league team. And that's a question. You know, I think that they definitely need to answer more fully how they are going to at least try to rectify that situation, because obviously the one game that they brought the Sounders reserves for down, they were eminently quality and won the game, but you can't obviously start the entire second team of your first team roster. You can't start them for every Defiance game.
I mean, you could
try.
You know who wouldn't like it?
Yeah,
Sacramento
would not like it, and I'm sure you'd start to get more complaints. But that's
do you think that
that's an aside, I suppose?
Do you think that, again, not to say throw your hands up and go, we're not winning, we're not here to win? Not that you'd ever say that out loud.
Yeah.
Although
they've
might.
implied that.
Yeah.
They've implied
but,
that.
Do you think the emotional connection that, frankly, Sounders fans beyond let's consider it the people that would be here, or the people that are at the bar every week or whatever that is, do you think? Because I do believe it exists, and you see it in the chat week over week. People bring up Baby Sounders. It was one of the most, wasn't it the most popular Twitch thing this weekend?
Yeah,
it was
40K,
silly.
40K for
that's
their
a lot of
knockout
people
games.
Watching young people play
Yeah,
soccer.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yep, it was certainly surprising to see
think
those kind of
that's
numbers.
where, again, and we make this joke about comments on Sounder at Heart and so on. I do feel like, in a weird way, they may have the attention of the average Sounders fan more than Defiance. And maybe it's just that it's different, or they win.
Yeah.
And it's changed the game.
Well,
but
it is a Sounders brand still.
Is there something though too, do we think they make a concerted effort to take some of these players and weave them into Defiance? Is that
the Academy kids?
Yeah, how quickly do you think they start to make those moves? Because at some
I think they've already
point-
tried.
Right. Yeah. But it just feels like, and maybe it's because of how either national team programs work or how the academy programs work, and that they don't want to rob from one to sort of fill gaps in the other. But do you think that there's a combination either of specific players or just timing to adjust the roster, for lack of a better way to say it, at Defiance?
A lot of those kids are already signed to Defiance deals. The academy kids do play up to Defiance on occasion.
But I think in a strategic or consistent kind of way. Is that just a decision you make as an organization? And you're you know what, this is what we're going to do.
I think they've already started to try to do that. I think the problem is that as you kind of referenced, those academy kids, the really highly talented ones, are not there consistently,
right?
Because
others,
national team commitments. Leyva is now going to be gone, and Ocampo Chavez, they're now going to be gone for the next 2+ weeks, and then if they qualify for the under-17 World Cup, they'll be gone. Although that's kind of in the fall, so it's not. USL is basically wrapping up by that point, and whether this Defiance are in the playoffs or not is obviously up in the air. So, I think the other issue at part is that they're just not old enough yet to have that many kids playing at the USL level. I think the USL probably doesn't get enough credit for its quality at this point. Again, no one's going to mistake it with the English Championship. But they're still, these are adults, grown adults for the most part, playing to keep food on the table for their families. And they've got, 8 to 12 years on some of these young Defiance kids. And there's just something to be said for someone just being bigger, faster, and stronger than you.
For sure.
And maybe they are not quite as technically gifted, but their athleticism can make up for a good deal of that. And the good news for the Sounders is it looks like this is just one crop of kids, because it looks like the U15s are almost as talented as this U17 crop. But okay, great, you've got a bunch of talented U15 kids. What are the odds that they're going to make the Defiance in the next 2 years? Because they'll only be 17 by that point. And so there's just an issue of time at this point, and the Sounders aren't inclined to start bringing down a lot of the reserves from the first team for any more than a fitness exercise when they need a game. And you don't want them down there for that many games anyway, because then you're not getting the kids, as John talks about in the chat.
Yeah,
you don't get, then they're not getting the development they need. And as Bragold says in the chat, Alfonso Campo Chavez hasn't scored for S2 or the Defiance, so it's all good to get him down. Of course, he played for them a bit last year, and he was 16 at that point, so he's it was even less mature. So we're hardly holding this against him that he hasn't scored with the Defiance yet.
It's probably going to be okay.
Yeah, he'll be fine, but there's still something to be said for just the maturity that you need and growing into your body to go along with the technical prowess. So hopefully, in the case of Ocampo Chavez, this has kind of sparked something within him, and he can take what he's learned at the U17 level and bring it to the Defiance and start producing. Because Garth has said if there are open spots for the first team, and if there are any talented kids who can take advantage of that, they'll sign them like they did Leyva. But I find that hard to. I'm not expecting that, at least well into the summer probably at best, because again, these kids need to get some time.
Yeah,
and as far as what they've shown so far at the Defiance level, none of them are ready to come up. You could even argue that Leyva still needs a bunch of time down there to continue to develop. My preference would be to get a few more of the first teamers down for those games to kind of supplement what the kids are going through or learning. So guys like Roldan and Buana, Wingo,
Roman Torres.
Those guys should be getting some more minutes, because it would be helpful for their development. And I don't know if you need to be starting 10 or 11 18-year-olds.
Right.
Start 6 or 7, and then you can bring a couple off the bench to get some minutes as well. That seems to me to be a good way to fix that, because the other thing is they're running into the same problem they had last year, where they're not able to really score at all. And they had Estrada, when he played, he was basically their single source of scoring for the first 2/3 of the season. I can only imagine what their record would have been if he wasn't with the team. So you've got it. I think sprinkling in a couple of the first team Sounders would do a world of good for the Defiance. You don't need to I don't think you need to start 10 18-year-olds. That's what I think it boils down to.
We have multiple questions and comments.
Yeah.
I don't know if we want to start here.
Sure, that's somewhat related to Defiance or Sounders development. Question: any news developments in regards to the Air Force Academy draftee Tucker Bone, who has been up a couple of times for training? Generally during his off time, he is able to come up. Let's see, it's almost May. I don't think we're going to know anything until June at the earliest.
Has he deleted those tweets yet?
I didn't see any tweets.
Okay, you could look into it later.
Okay. So he is, he's fulfilling his the last of his school commitments.
Yep.
If he gets another break, I'm sure he'll come up here and train. But he's looked really good in the trainings that I've seen him in. So I think they definitely have something there. But it's just a matter if he can parlay his talents into a deal that lets him defer his Air Force obligations. And I think he has to win a contract with the first team essentially to do that. I think I'm not entirely clear, so I don't want to speak completely out of turn. But I think
you're on the internet, so go for it.
Yeah. So I think that's kind of where he's at right now. But that is a good question. I have asked
Yeah,
them
Kristen.
about it.
Graduation's May 30th.
May 30th, thank you. So graduation May 30th, so we still got a month and some change. And then, so he'll probably won't even be up here until the first week in June, at which point the Sounders will be on their Gold Cup break. So he's not going to get a cup, he's just going to train probably, maybe get a Defiance game as, I don't even know if he can play actually, unless he signs a type of deal. I'll have to look into that and see what he is able to do prior to winning a deal, because
I can't believe you just don't know this off the top
right?
of your head.
I'm deeply, deeply sorry.
And then we got another. Sorry.
No, go ahead. I
was just going to say, Justin asked if the organization made a mistake by keeping the Defiance in the championship and not dropping them down. And it's interesting because I've been listening to this English sports talk radio thing, and I was in London for a few days last week, and there was actually someone, one of their regular weekly prognosticators on one of the shows, who actually was talking about USL. And that was actually talking about, comparing it to some of the other tiers of,
football.
The football over there. And actually one of the remarks was, while there is obviously a drop-off from MLS to USL, was that there were a lot of players who had played in other top-tier leagues and things, and it wasn't just a bunch of kids all playing soccer, which a lot of other countries, that is like a tier down, a second tier down, like there's just these clubs completely made up of, a lot of youth prospects or sort of, middling players, and that a lot of the clubs, a lot of the sides in USL actually had some quality stuff. And it's funny because they flagged on basically all the players we've talked about over the years, but like the Drogbas of the world, et cetera. But I would say in that same vein, like that's an observation by someone who's probably seen 10 USL games ever, they noticed it. And I think that's where Justin's comment might be super valid. And we talk about not scoring. That might not be that the players aren't good enough to score goals in general terms. It might just be the talent that they are playing up against is just different.
So I actually asked last year about this, because the then S2 were going through these same issues where they were getting killed every week.
Yeah.
And with the change, and there were some changes in the professional league standards, and obviously the USL League 1 and 2 were getting to beginning to ramp up, and League 2 is basically amateur, so we'll set them aside for a moment. But the League 1, it's only got 10 teams, or maybe 11, might be 11.
Okay.
And the closest one to this Defiance is Tucson, FC Tucson, which is a bit of a flight. And then the other teams are in Madison, Wisconsin. You've got one in Georgia. You've got Toronto, TFC2, Orlando City B, Richmond Kickers. There are a couple more, but none of them. Dallas, they just started their second team, and they play in North Texas. And so the question I asked was, what's the benefit of having those kids at USL League 1 as opposed to the championship, and are those benefits outweighed by the other issues, including the increased travel time, the cost of that? Because if you're having to fly out to Tucson for your closest game and otherwise flying out to Georgia, that's going to be an increased cost.
It just changes the cost dynamic overall. Yeah.
But is the level that USL League 1 is at, is it sufficiently, are you getting what you need out of that level to justify dropping down from the championship?
Okay.
And last year they were clear that, we're going to stay at the championship level. There are obviously a number of benefits for them doing that, but one would wonder if this is going to be their what they want to do going forward, then maybe they will start to change their mind, because again, as Gar said, you can't be losing 3-4-0 every game.
Right.
That's just not. You just can't have that from a development standpoint or from a business standpoint. Winning 2 games and having a negative, 60 goal differential over the course of the year is just not. It's just not good business, and I can't see that the Rainiers would want to continue to go along with that. But again, the other side of that is if you're going down to League One, how does that affect the business model? You're saving some money probably on salaries, but you're not saving any money on travel costs. And are you bringing in?
But that's the global club discussion at that point. Like, are you just going to say we're going to try and bridge the gap between our youth and the big club, and is the better, knock on wood, way to do it that? And if
there's an argument that it is.
And again, I'm not Garth, so I'm sure has a better handle on this. But it's also one of those things where, like, at some point, they're gonna have to make a decision.
Yeah.
And it's either you're gonna invest in this USL side and
bring in
stack
some,
it a little bit more,
or bring some players down from the first team.
Yeah.
Or you're gonna have. This cannot continue. I think they will improve over the course of the year because they improved over the course of last year. But you can't have that type of performance because it's just you're going to be playing in front of 300 people like you were at the last days of S2. And then what's the point of having moved? I think the point was to get them a little bit of their own identity and also bump up the business numbers.
Right.
But at this rate, you're not accomplishing that. So you might as well just stayed at Starfire and played in front of nominal crowds because that's what they're kind of on the track for.
And that's
I think
not
right
the
now.
business model that the Rainiers
signed up for.
And
everybody.
The
city of Tacoma,
the city. And like that's not what anybody wants.
Yeah, are they going to build a $10 million stadium, 5,000 seater, to watch a team lose 3-0 every week?
I'm going to vote no.
Yeah, because they're going to take those returns or they're going to do the analysis and realize that they're in the process of doing a feasibility study right now. Actually, it should be done. I need to check on that to make sure that the numbers will work. And I'm sure they're taking into account what they're seeing right now as they run those numbers. And if the stadium situation if the numbers don't crunch out to make the stadium solution viable, then they're probably going to scrap it. Cheney has been a good stopgap location. And, I've actually been there. I've enjoyed watching games there.
Yeah.
And, especially when the weather gets nice, it's a fantastic place to watch a game. But again, I don't know if the Rainiers want to have a team, 2 teams there,
right,
for the next 20 years.
How? Speaking of that, how was the crowd at the Rain match? Do you know?
It was a good crowd. I was not there at the game.
Okay.
But they had over 5,000.
That's great.
That's great for the Rain. I believe so. Yes.
Yeah, and that was something I had seen Heather post that on Twitter.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, well, that changes the discussion. Like, you can find a way there now?
Yeah, and way back, and more importantly.
Like, very much attractive to people.
Yeah.
For varying reasons. But not the least of which is, even within Tacoma, especially on a weekend, you take transit there. Like, if you took the 594 or whatever there, like, you can't just go straight to the stadium.
No.
Like, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really big deal. So I'm curious to see how that goes. So Rain won, right?
No, they tied 1-1.
Excuse me. Had not been paying attention, just kind of caught up a little bit this afternoon. But sounds like everything I had read kind of in scanning, people had positive things to say.
Yeah.
So
again, Cheney is a nice place. The work they've done to remove the mound, so you can't really see the difference. What the work they put into making sure the field is up to snuff, which is not happened in other USL places or MLS places, New York City FC. But they've done a really good job of just making sure the experience is good, and it's a good place. I have no complaints about it whatsoever, except for it's a pain in the ass to get to if you're in the north side.
There's a rosé event coming up.
Oh, I'm interested in this.
On Mother's Day. Yeah.
Mother's Day rosé, I love
If
it.
you like rosé, there's going to be some interesting things, which we'll share more about moving forward. But
I'm looking forward to that.
I had a great conversation with the Mickey Turner, the Dave Clark, about a week ago, and he had some cool things to share. And we actually are going to have Dave on the show, guest Dave,
the prodigal son
which is gonna be
returns.
super fun. We should actually call it that,
Yes.
just to make it super weird.
I think
for Dave, basically.
Is he coming on next week, or is this in sometime in the near
I think it's
future?
in the future. Next week would actually be a good idea, but it's in the queue, as it
Excellent.
were.
Excellent.
So I had thrown out if anybody had questions, because we've got about 30 minutes left if we choose to keep chatting our way through. But Bregel asked about predictions on the roster for Wednesday.
The lineup.
I have some thoughts. I don't know if it's going to be terribly different. I think your point at the beginning of, like, expect to see maybe a couple of tweaks.
Yeah.
I just don't know about the health of a couple of players.
Yeah.
So
if this show was on, Wednesday, I could give you a better answer having...
You mean like Wednesday at 6 when the lineups come out?
No,
You'd
Wednesday
have a
at
really
like
good...
2 o'clock or so.
Oh, okay.
Or
Got
maybe
it.
Tuesday night after practice.
Got it.
What I'm trying to say is I'm going to practice tomorrow, and so it'll be interesting to see who is out there, because normally they'd have 2 days off, but since they have the midweek game, they're coming out early. They did a regeneration session today, so there wasn't any practice to go to. So this is obviously on a short schedule. It's difficult to people may be inside on their own programs, going in the pool, doing the bike, what have you. So, and we may not even get a full lineup of, a full group of people out there for the game or for the practice. But assuming that Rui Diaz is out and Bruin is out,
Torres up top.
that might be and let's say assume that Rui Diaz is out, Bruin's out, but Marshall is back. Then you're going to roll with Marshall and Kim Ki-hee, obviously, and then so your back line will probably mostly be intact. They may give Nuhu a run at left back. He did help shut things down. And shut things down on Sunday, and he needs some minutes. So I could see them resting Brad Smith and going with Nuhu, and then Leardom. That'd be an iffy one, because I don't think you want him doing 3 games in a week. So is Sada Abdul Salam ready to take on a starting role? I mean, if you're gonna anytime, this is probably the best time to get him in there. Yeah, he was on the bench for LAFC, so I don't think they'd. Yes, it's very difficult, because then you are basically the entire your right back and left back are completely different.
Yeah,
and then again, do you want to start Rodriguez 3 games in a week? Probably not. Again, Nico can go 3 games in a week. Roldan obviously can. Svensson, do you want to have him three games in a week? Morris can go 3 games in a week. I'm sure they're still getting some minor monitoring of him, but nothing crazy. But again, so that'd be kind of a good question too. So I think you can see a rotated lineup on Wednesday, and so if I had to guess, if Marshall's back, then you start Marshall, Kim Ki-hee, and then I think they would start Nuhu, keep Leardom, and maybe give Leardom the day off on Sunday.
Yeah.
And then in the midfield, maybe you go with Delham and Roldan, or you go with Nico and Roldan as your defensive mids. Give Svensson the day off, and then you go with Ship, because he only played a part of the game. And then in your band of 3, you go with maybe Ship, Ladere, or Ship, Rodriguez, and
I gotta tell you, Rodriguez, like, totally different player in the lineup that was out there yesterday.
Yeah, he was neutralized.
Like, neutralized is maybe even too soft a word.
Yeah. They have some limited options, and part of this is because their roster is so small. Yeah. They only 23 or maybe 24 with Leyva, who's maybe you throw Leyva out there and put him out there with Roldan, and then you.
I'm here for this.
So yeah, that might be something. Leave that with Roldan as your defensive mids, and then you can move Nico back up to the band of 3 where you really need him, especially if you're going to have to rest.
Can Leyva
Rodriguez.
take corners?
He's a pretty good corner taker.
Yes, because someone needs to be able to take corners.
Yeah.
Not
So maybe-
named Nico Ladero.
That would maybe be my. This really depends on what their forward situation is like.
Well, I mean,
Because-
that is the crux of it.
Yeah, we need to either Bruin or Ruidiaz needs to, fingers crossed, be back. They said that Ruidiaz was close, but and could have played or almost could have played against Toronto, but then was basically done for the LAFC game. So something happened to.
Well, and Punch Punch just posted that in the chat, which is like, what is up with that assessment? Seemed super random.
Ruidiaz?
Agree.
Yes. I think it can be
By the way,
safely.
that is not the first time that this has happened with Sounders in the last 3 years.
Oh, yes. They've had a couple of those where it's just been, he's day-to-day, and then it turns into next month he's
Check out my
he's back.
boot.
Yeah. So what I've heard and what Spectre has said is that is just they're trying to be as cautious as possible and have him put no weight or pressure on that foot to try to help accelerate the healing process. So they're basically doing the opposite that they did with Morris, as we talked about in 2017, where he tried to play through it and it just ended up being a disaster. And he ended up getting injured and missing MLS Cup because he was out for the last 4 months. So I think that is and that is why I'm somewhat skeptical that he will be ready for Wednesday, because I think they're just wary of having him in a position where he re-injures it and then he's out for 3 months. Ask Aaron, he gave Rolla a ride today.
We might have to text Aaron Riley. I did not see that, and that's amazing. Bregel points out, something being off with Kim in the last couple matches. It's really tough to say.
The Toronto game was a different
thing.
You had Altidore. He's really good, as much as people give him a bunch of crap. He's really good.
He's a different player than a lot of other forwards, frankly, in the league.
Yeah.
Just like his style is different. I didn't see that as much as like a ding on Kim as it was like Pozuelo and
Altidore are really good players. So I would just kind of throw out the Toronto game. But
and then just kind of casual thing to throw out there, out of the next 5 matches, 4 at home. So between this week on Wednesday and then May 15th versus Orlando City, and then there's no home Sounders
in May
until June 29th.
It's nuts.
So for those of you who want to complain about match times, the weather, the whatever, now's your chance in the next, where are we at? So little less than a month to catch some matches before you get to the core of summer.
Yeah, because you're not going to see any between June or May, end of May and June.
And frankly, like a lot of interesting tests there too. So we talked a lot about San Jose and LAFC at home this week, but then away at Minnesota, and then back home versus Houston, who's a lot better than a lot of people expected them to be. And then a few days later versus Orlando City at home, and then it's quick turn away Philadelphia, and then away for quite some time, with a bit of a break between the 5th in Montreal, or June, excuse me, and then the 29th versus Vancouver. So it's a interesting little run with breaks and just other things going on the schedule. And I think at this point, like, we should just grasp that it is never going to be easier because every year there's going to be some sort of FIFA thing, or maybe you make CCL, or Open Cup happens, which we haven't even talked about.
Yeah.
And there's but like now's your time and to get in, and I think this is it's an interesting point for Sounders, especially if they can crack the code and frankly just have a good show on Wednesday night. I think that allows us to go into.
They're going to be motivated. So
Oh my gosh.
I don't think that's going to be that's not going to be the issue. The issue is really going to be and the other thing is San Jose, they're going to be missing at least one of their stalwart defenders. So. On yellow card accumulation, which is impressive to do in 7 games.
I mean,
to
the
get 5
issue
yellow cards
is actually 12:30 kick. What is that even? I don't even know how to do that. 12:30.
Yeah, that's horrible.
Kick. Yeah. We got a couple of other comments. One, what's up with the Sounders streaming partner increasing the price 40% 1 month into the season?
Is this YouTube TV?
I'm guessing that's what it is.
Yeah.
Didn't see that. That's not great.
Well, the other annoying thing is that ESPN no longer runs replays, or ESPN Plus no longer runs replays of Sounders games.
I went for it this morning just because I wanted to peek at something.
Yeah.
Nope. Disappointing.
I mean, that game's on Fox, so that's a bit of a different situation. But even just your standard local, 7:30 game, you cannot access the replay. And I don't think Root Sports does replays of Sounders games anymore either.
I don't think so.
So there's literally no way to catch a game except for YouTube TV, which is a pointless thing to have if you are in the Seattle market because the games are over the air. So why would you need a YouTube subscription?
Well, as a I literally need to have an antenna again to watch Show TV.
Yeah.
Because I don't get it on Hulu, which is super annoying. So that's not awesome from a pricing
and I want to ask.
perspective.
I want to find out what's going on. I keep forgetting, but that was really annoying, and I don't understand the reason for that. And, unless you're just trying to steer subscriptions to YouTube TV. But again, why would I ever get YouTube TV if you have ESPN Plus and or cable? Even for the the cord cutters, you could still watch Sounders games on an over the air with an antenna.
Yes.
So unless you are just adamantly opposed to even having a TV in your house, which I'm sure there are people out there, but
oh wow,
that's the cost of the cost of that is nothing because you can get a TV for $20 and you can get an antenna for $8, and
So Mariners play at 1:10
on Sunday.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. We're in a doubleheader.
You probably won't be getting cheap hot dogs.
Well, that's fine for me, but not consuming those.
No victory
those
dogs.
Yeah, yes.
You're missing out.
Yeah.
I'd just like to point out that you're missing out on victory hot dogs. So I think there's other stuff going on. There's some payment lawsuits and other things going on that you can probably bring us up to speed on for those that are interested.
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit about the various lawsuits that are going on in the world of soccer. The one that broke last week, which it wasn't a lawsuit per se, but was related to the Sounders, is the solidarity payments and training compensation fight. MLS announced that they're basically going to comply with what is required to do so. For those who don't follow that stuff or don't care, basically, when a player signs his first professional contract, there is a rule that the team that signs him sends a little bit of money back to the teams that trained him. We're talking about youth players, basically. It's basically to get an economy going to make sure that these academies are seeing something for the time and money that they put into developing players. And then further, when the player gets transferred, if they're talented enough and they get transferred to somebody else, a portion of that transfer fee also goes back to the academy team. So it obviously provides an incentive for those academies to continue to develop players and provide for increased opportunities for youth. And MLS had not been doing that for the past, the rule went into effect in 2003, and MLS had never observed it, mainly because in 2003, MLS did not have youth academies and weren't spending any money on it. And so the few players that they were developing, they were like, I'm not going to pay you for the 3 players that we're developing over the course of 5 years, especially when we're not getting anything back for it. So they basically declined to participate until last Thursday. And so that will have some impact on academies throughout the country. There are a lot of fights going on about whether pay to play should preclude academies from being able to recruit these monies.
Yeah.
Because basically they're getting it on the front end from
Right.
parents who pay, and then they're also collecting on the back end. Now they're not collecting on the back end from the parents; they're getting it from the the clubs who are signing them. But there's just a kind of a philosophical disagreement about whether they should do that. Whether it's illegal for them to do so is another issue. It is not, as far as I can tell. So we're talking more philosophy than the legality here. But it'll affect the Sounders to some degree because with their with their burgeoning academy, they're probably going to lose a player here or there who just decides Real Madrid's calling and I'm turning 18. Sure, I'll go play. I'll go sign for them.
I guess I'll go to Real Madrid.
Or maybe they have a European passport and they can go even younger than 18 to go over there and sign it. And it's just one of those facts of life. You're going to lose a few of those players. FC Dallas has the most famous example recently. Weston McKennie, who's playing for Schalke in the Bundesliga, was in the FC Dallas academy for 4 or 5 years, decides to go sign for Schalke. And because MLS didn't observe this policy, Dallas got nothing for them. Now, it's not like life-changing money. You're talking like $40,000 a year. But if you're there for 5 years, that's $200,000. That's
right.
Going to be able to pay a trainer or a coach for a year or two. And then additionally, if McKinney gets sold from Schalke to Chelsea for $60 million, you think Dallas is going to want a piece of 5% of $60 million? Yes, they are. Which is probably why MLS decided to change this policy and now that a lot of talented players are coming up through the academy ranks, they're going to start seeing these players move along, and they want to make sure they're protected because otherwise you're just signing a bunch or developing a bunch of good players, and if a Christian Pulisic decides to leave, you're going to be really pissed if you're developing him and not seeing any money for him. So
John points out that would be $3 million.
Yeah, for FC Dallas, if McKinney sells for 60, they're just getting a check for $3 million, just right there.
And they're like, cool.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And then if he sells for even more down the line, which again we're getting in kind of pie in the sky here, but let's say he really blows up and goes from Schalke to Borussia Dortmund for 60, and then he gets sold to Real Madrid for 150. You get 5% of that at 2. So you can see how.
So what you're saying is MLS likes money.
Yes, and they decided that they would like to see more of it.
And then maybe we should make quick predictions for the 2 matches we have. But the other, let's call it news of the week, not that anyone's surprised, is MLS at 30 teams.
Yeah.
Color, everyone not surprised at all.
I mean, it was the least shocking announcement ever. I mean, Garber already alluded to that, I think, at the Board of Governors, or the State of this League address in December. He said, we got to figure out how we're going to get to 30 teams or past 28. And when he said 28 is where we're going to stop, no one believed him in the first place because there were 12 cities looking for teams to come in, and they're not going to pass up $200 million times, even if they only take 6 of them, you're still not going to pass up $200 million for 6 teams. So Hunch Punch says 32 would be my bet. That's probably my bet, too, is where they will actually stop. Unless they decide their business model can support more than that, in which case they'll go higher than that.
Annoying. Like it's never going to end.
Yeah.
Just go to 40 and have your own little pro-rel thing.
Yeah.
Just get it over with.
Yeah, they'll never do that.
So other than that, let's make some quick predictions. So San Jose 7:30 on Wednesday and LAFC Sunday at 12:30.
Yes.
What do you got?
So I think, as I said, I think they'll come out motivated against San Jose. I think the lineup will be mixed. San Jose's going to be missing a few players as well. I wouldn't be surprised if Wondolowski gets a start, and so he'll probably score a goal. But I'll still say the Sounders will win 3-1.
Okay. How about Sunday?
LSE. So this is dependent on Rui Diaz's status, and Bruin for that matter. They need one of those 2 guys back for that game. And so I think they'll be mostly at full strength for that game because, again, they'll want to put on a good performance, and they are going to, again, be motivated to beat LAFC. I'm not sure they're going to be able to get it done at this point, but I will give them a 2-2 draw against LAFC. So they got 4 points out of the 2 games.
Now I have to change my scores because they were basically the same thing I was going to say. I'm going to start from the end. 2-2 LAFC. That is not just my wish, but I genuinely think they're going to come out with a different game plan. And home matters at the end of the day. I think 2-0 San Jose. I think there's, again, motivation, but also just they're a better team than San Jose at the end of the day. Like, with or without a stacked bunch of forwards, I just think they're a different team. I want no part of Wondolowski. That guy's just scores whatever. But I'm going to say they bring a little bit of shutout game. I think Fry, frankly, could use a little bit of a shutout game.
It's just so difficult given their injuries and rotation. It's just, I don't know what they're going to do with their lineup, especially on Wednesday.
Are you going to go see the Avengers this week with JJ?
I hadn't planned to. I'll wait till the crowds die down.
You should get on
in
that.
August.
I was going to say, it's like, it's going to be like direct. It's going to be at your TV
before I can get into theater.
That's really funny. Any other kind of closing words, thoughts, things we should be thinking about for the next few days?
Not really. I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
Go
read Athletic articles.
What? Go read The Athletic.
Yeah, go read The Athletic. I ran the story with Paul Tenorio on the solidarity training compensation payments. That was an exhausting write, that's for sure. And aside from that, just you can find me on the Twitters at TurnerESQ.
Cool. Well, yeah, Portland won a match, but we don't really care because it's Portland.
Yeah.
And whatever. Anyway, thank you, as always, to the Berliner Pub down here in downtown Renton, which we didn't make jokes at the beginning of the show.
Right?
We just dove in because we were all sad.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks, Mickey. Thanks to all of y'all that have joined us here at the bar. We should be back next Monday. Maybe we'll have Dave Clark if he's if we're cool enough for him to hang out with us. And I think that's that for tonight. So thanks, y'all, for joining us.
Yep.
Night.
Night.